Kendra, you think you can control me forever with your money and power? I will leave you. Jameson's voice cut through the sunlit campus lawn, venom dripping as he stood with his mistress after their daughter's graduation. Veronica, smirking, added, "He deserves someone who matches his ambition, not a show-off like you." The crowd froze, eyes on Kendra Washington, a 37-year-old black media mogul, as her world seemed to shatter. But is this betrayal her downfall or her rise? Dive into a tale of resilience, revenge, and redemption that'll keep you glued. Can Kendra outwit her scheming husband? Will she shield her empire and her daughter's heart? Subscribe now for our latest gripping stories and comment to share where you're watching from. Stay tuned for shocking twists. You won't believe how this unfolds. The sun hung high over Atlanta, bathing the sprawling campus of Emory University in a golden glow. The air buzzed with the hum of celebration as families spilled out of the grand auditorium, their voices mingling with laughter and the rustle of graduation gowns. Kendra Washington, 37, stood poised at the edge of the lawn, her navy silk dress catching the light like a beacon of elegance. Her eyes, sharp and warm, followed her daughter, Melissa Carter, who was radiant at 18, her black cap tilted jauntily as she clutched her high school diploma. Kendra's heart swelled with pride, a fleeting moment of perfection, until the shadow of her husband, Jameson Carter, loomed. Jameson, 40, a mid-level tech manager with a practiced charm, had been distant for months, his hazel eyes avoiding hers at dinner, his excuses for late nights growing thinner. Kendra had sensed the fracture in their 15-year marriage, but today was Melissa's day, and she had resolved to keep the cracks hidden. Now, as families gathered for photos and congratulations, Jameson stepped forward, his polished shoes sinking into the grass. Beside him stood Veronica Langley, 42, a real estate tycoon whose crimson dress screamed defiance. Her platinum hair gleamed, and her lips curled in a smug arc that made Kendra's stomach twist. "Kendra," Jameson's voice boomed, slicing through the chatter like a blade. "You thought you could control me forever with your money and power, but I'm done." The words landed like a thunderclap. The crowd, parents, students, faculty, froze, their smiles fading into gasps. Melissa, who had been laughing with friends, turned, her diploma slipping slightly in her grip. Kendra felt the weight of 100 Z's, each one a pinprick against her skin, but she stood taller, her chin lifting as if to defy gravity itself. Veronica, emboldened, stepped closer, her heels clicking on the stone path. "He deserves someone who matches his ambition," she sneered, her voice dripping with condescension. "Not a show-off like you, parading your wealth to keep him in line." The insult stung, sharp and personal, but Kendra's face remained a mask of composure, her brown eyes narrowing only slightly. Melissa's breath hitched and she rushed to her mother's side, her graduation gown billowing. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What's happening?" Kendra's hand found Melissa's, squeezing gently, grounding them both. "Stay calm, baby," she murmured, her tone steady as steel. She turned to Jameson, her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that made him falter for a split second. "Jameson," she said, her voice clear and measured, carrying over the stunned silence, "today is Melissa's day. If you want to air your grievances, pick another stage." The crowd murmured, some nodding in approval, others whispering in shock. A mother nearby clutched her purse, muttering, "The nerve of him." Jameson's jaw tightened, his confidence wavering but not breaking. He adjusted his tie, a nervous tick Kendra knew too well. "Don't play the saint, Kendra," he spat, stepping closer, his voice rising. "You've always looked down on me, the tech guy married to the great Kendra Washington, queen of Horizon Media. I'm tired of living in your shadow." His words were meant to wound, to strip her bare before this audience, but Kendra's expression didn't crack. She felt the heat of betrayal, the sting of public humiliation, but she channeled it into a quiet strength that seemed to unnerve him. Veronica laughed, a sharp, grating sound. "Oh, please," she said, tossing her hair. "You think you're Untouchable because you run a media empire? Jameson's moving on to someone who values him, not some control freak who buys loyalty with cash. The accusation hung in the air, vicious and bold. Melissa's eyes filled with tears and she stepped forward, her voice breaking. Dad, how could you do this? To Mom? To me? On my graduation day? Her words cracked like a whip, and for a moment, Jameson's bravado flickered, his eyes darting to his daughter. Kendra gently pulled Melissa back, her touch a silent promise of protection. Melissa, don't, she said softly, then faced Jameson again. You've made your point, she said, her voice low but cutting. And you've chosen your audience. Now leave before you embarrass yourself further. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Poor Melissa. What a disgrace. And Kendra caught the sympathetic glance of a teacher nearby, her eyes brimming with outrage on Kendra's behalf. Jameson's face flushed, a mix of anger and defiance. This isn't over, Kendra, he said, pointing a finger. You can't just dismiss me like one of your employees. I'm free now, and Veronica and I are building something you'll never understand. Veronica looped her arm through his, her smile triumphant, as if they'd already won. But Kendra's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, a glimmer of something unreadable, confidence perhaps, or the promise of retribution. We'll see about that, she said, her voice so calm it sent a shiver through the onlookers. Melissa clung to Kendra's arm, her voice barely a whisper. Mom, I'm so sorry. Kendra turned to her daughter, her eyes softening. You have nothing to be sorry for, she said, brushing a tear from Melissa's cheek. This is your day, and no one, not even your father, can take that from you. She straightened, her posture regal, and addressed the crowd with a nod. Thank you all for celebrating with us, she said, her voice projecting grace. Melissa, let's go take those photos you wanted. The crowd parted as Kendra led Melissa away, their steps measured, their heads high. Behind them, Jameson and Veronica stood isolated, the weight of disapproving stares pressing in. A father nearby muttered, What kind of man does that to his family? Another voice chimed in, And on her graduation, disgusting. Veronica's smile faltered, her confidence shaken by the crowd's judgment. But Jameson tugged her arm, pulling her toward the parking lot, his jaw set in stubborn resolve. As Kendra and Melissa reached a quiet corner of the lawn, shaded by ancient oaks, Melissa's shoulders shook. Why, Mom? Why would he do this? Kendra knelt slightly, meeting her daughter's eyes. Because he's lost himself, she said, her voice gentle but firm. But we haven't. We're stronger than this, Melissa, I promise you. Melissa nodded, wiping her eyes, and managed a small smile. I want to go home with you, she said. No reception, no party, just us. Kendra's heart ached, but she nodded. Just us, she agreed. They turned toward the car, leaving the whispers and stares behind. Kendra's mind raced, not with the pain of Jameson's words, but with the knowledge she'd kept hidden for months, the evidence of his affair, the financial maneuvers she'd thwarted, the legal fortress she'd built. Jameson thought he'd struck a fatal blow, but he had no idea the battle had already begun, and Kendra was playing to win. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn, and as Kendra drove away with Melissa, the campus fading in the rearview mirror, she felt a strange calm settle over her. This was not the end. It was the spark that would ignite her fight, her triumph, her legacy. And Jameson, with his cruel words and his smug mistress, would soon learn the cost of underestimating Kendra Washington. The Atlanta skyline glittered. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Kendra Washington's penthouse, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within its walls, the elevator doors slid shut behind Kendra and Melissa, sealing them away from the echoes of Jameson's betrayal on the Emory University lawn. The air was heavy, thick with unspoken pain, as they stepped into the sleek living room, its modern elegance now feeling like a hollow stage. Kendra, still in her navy silk dress, kicked off her heels, The soft thud against the hardwood floor a quiet rebellion against the day's chaos. Melissa, 18, clung to her graduation gown, her diploma tucked under her arm like a shield, her face streaked with dried tears. "Mom," Melissa's voice broke as she sank onto the cream leather sofa. How could Dad do that? In front of everyone. With her? The question hung, raw and jagged, tearing at Kendra's heart. She wanted to shield her daughter from the truth, to wrap her in the warmth of the life they'd built together, but the wound was open, and Melissa deserved honesty. Kendra sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed, a silent anchor in the chaos. "Baby," Kendra began, her voice steady but laced with a tenderness that belied her own hurt. "Your father made a choice today, a cruel one. But it's not about you and it's not about us." She reached for Melissa's hand, her fingers warm against her daughter's trembling ones. Melissa's eyes, wide and searching, locked onto hers, pleading for answers. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why now? Why like that?" Kendra took a deep breath, the weight of the last 2 years pressing against her chest. She had carried the suspicion of Jameson's infidelity like a secret burden, shielding Melissa from its shadow to preserve her daughter's final years of childhood. But now, with the truth laid bare before a crowd of strangers, there was no hiding anymore. "Melissa," she said, her tone firm yet gentle, "I've known something was wrong for a while. Your father, he's been pulling away, and I found proof he's been unfaithful." Melissa's breath caught, her eyes widening. "You knew? For how long?" The question wasn't accusatory, but it carried the sting of a child realizing her world wasn't as secure as she'd believed. Kendra's gaze drifted to the city lights, their distant sparkle a reminder of the empire she'd built, the strength she'd forged. "About 2 years," she admitted, turning back to Melissa. "It started with small things, late nights, vague excuses, a coldness I couldn't explain. Then 18 months ago I saw a message on his phone from Veronica Langley." Melissa's face crumpled, the name a fresh wound. "That woman from today, the one who laughed at you?" Kendra nodded, her jaw tightening at the memory of Veronica's smug taunt. "Yes, the message was intimate, a hotel room booking, a plan to meet in secret. I didn't confront him, not then. I needed to be sure, and I needed to protect us." Melissa's hands clenched into fists, her voice rising. "Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped, or something." Kendra's heart ached at the fierce loyalty in her daughter's voice. She cupped Melissa's face, her thumbs brushing away new tears. "Because you were finishing high school, chasing your dreams, becoming this incredible young woman," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't want this ugliness to touch you, and I wasn't ready to let him destroy what we had until I knew we'd be safe." "Safe?" Melissa's brow furrowed, confusion mixing with her anger. Kendra leaned back, her mind flashing to the nights she'd spent poring over financial records, the meetings with her lawyer, Simone, the quiet moves to secure her empire. "Your father wasn't just unfaithful," she said, choosing her words carefully. "He had plans, Melissa. Plans to take what's mine, our home, my company, the wealth I built. But I've been one step ahead." Melissa's eyes widened, a spark of awe cutting through her pain. "You mean you've been fighting him all this time?" Kendra's lips curved into a small, resolute smile. "Not fighting, baby. Preparing. I've worked with Simone, my lawyer, to protect our assets. There's a prenup, a strong one, with a fidelity clause. If he's unfaithful, and he is, he loses any claim to what's mine. I've moved money, secured accounts, and gathered evidence. He thinks he's winning, but he's already lost." The room fell silent, the hum of the city outside a faint backdrop to the weight of Kendra's words. Melissa stared at her mother, her tears slowing as admiration replaced despair. "You're incredible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All this time you were carrying this, and you still showed up for me. For everything." Kendra's throat tightened, and she pulled Melissa into a fierce hug, inhaling the familiar scent of her daughter's coconut shampoo. "I'd carry the world for you," she murmured. "And I always will." But Melissa pulled back, her expression hardening. "I hate him," she said, her voice sharp with conviction. "After what he did today, humiliating you, parading that woman around, I don't want to see him again." Kendra's heart twisted. She wanted to defend Melissa's right to her anger, but she also knew the complexity of love and family. "You don't have to decide that now," she said gently. "He's your father, and what he did doesn't erase the years he was there for you. But you get to choose how to feel, and I'll support you no matter what." Melissa nodded, her shoulders sagging as the day's exhaustion settled in. "I just want to be with you," she said, her voice small. "No reception, no party. Can we just stay here?" Kendra's eyes softened, and she brushed a stray curl from Melissa's forehead. "Of course, baby. Just us." She stood, moving to the kitchen, her bare feet silent on the cool floor. "How about I make your favorite, Mackie? And cheese the way Grandma taught me?" Melissa managed a faint smile, the first since the lawn. "With extra cheese." Kendra chuckled, the sound a small victory against the day's darkness. "Always." As she pulled ingredients from the fridge, her mind churned. The confrontation with Jameson had been a public wound, but it was also a signal. The game was. She thought of the evidence locked in her safe. Screenshots of texts, hotel receipts, bank transfers. She thought of Simone's calm assurance. "We've got him, Kendra. He won't touch what's yours." And she thought of Veronica's smug laughter, a challenge Kendra was ready to meet. Melissa curled up on the sofa, her gown draped over the armrest, and Kendra glanced at her, her heart swelling with love and resolve. This was her why, her daughter, her legacy, her fight. Jameson had thought his words would break her, that his betrayal would leave her crumbling. But he didn't know the fire in Kendra Washington, the strength she'd honed through. Years of building Horizon Media, of navigating a world that often underestimated her. As the cheese melted into the pasta, filling the penthouse with a comforting aroma, Kendra made a silent vow. She would not let Jameson's cruelty define them. She would protect Melissa, reclaim her life, and show the world, and Jameson, that she was unbreakable. The truth was, painful, yes, but it was also her weapon, and she wielded it with precision. Tonight, she and Melissa would heal, if only a little. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. 18 months before the explosive confrontation on the Emory University lawn, Kendra Washington sat alone in her penthouse office, the Atlanta skyline a mosaic of lights beyond the glass. The clock ticked, past midnight, its soft rhythm a counterpoint to the storm brewing in her mind. At 35, Kendra was the formidable chairwoman of Horizon Media, a black woman who'd clawed her way to the top of a cutthroat industry. But tonight, her empire felt like a distant concern, overshadowed by a single searing image, a text message, on her husband Jameson's phone, glowing in the dark of their kitchen. TMRW, Ritz, room 512. Don't let her suspect. The sender, Veronica L. Kendra's fingers tightened around her coffee mug, the ceramic warm against her palms. She'd found the message by accident, reaching for Jameson's phone to check. A missed call while he showered. The words had hit like a physical blow, each syllable a crack in the foundation of their 15-year marriage. Jameson, with his easy charm and hazel eyes, had been her partner, her confidant, the father of their daughter, Melissa. But the man who'd once vowed forever was slipping away, and this message was the proof she'd dreaded. She didn't cry. Kendra Washington didn't crumble. Instead, she snapped a photo of the screen, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest, and sent it to Simone Carter, no relation to Jameson, a divorce attorney whose reputation for dismantling unfaithful spouses was legendary. "Simone," Kendra typed, her fingers flying. "I need you. Call me now." Within minutes, her phone buzzed, Simone's voice crisp and no nonsense. "Kendra, what's happened?" Kendra recounted the message, her voice low, controlled, but laced with a fury she could barely contain. "I think he's cheating, and I need to know how to protect myself and Melissa." Simone didn't hesitate. "Meet me tomorrow, 8 a.m. at my office, Bring everything, bank statements, investment records, your prenup. If he's stepping out, we'll make sure he steps into a trap of his own making. Kendra hung up, her mind racing. The prenup, drafted by her late father, a legal titan, was her first line of defense. It included a fidelity clause. If either party committed adultery, they forfeited any claim to the other's premarital assets. Kendra's wealth, Horizon Media, her real estate, her investment portfolios, was her inheritance, her creation. Jameson, a mid-level tech manager, had signed the agreement with a grudging nod, never imagining he'd test its teeth. The next morning, Kendra sat across from Simone in a sleek downtown office, the city humming below. Simone, 40, her braids pulled into a neat bun poured over the prenup, her eyes sharp. "This is airtight," she said, tapping the document. "If he's cheating, he gets nothing of yours. But we need proof, and we need to secure your assets. Now." Kendra nodded, her jaw set. "I want to know who she is, what he's planning, and how far this goes." Simone's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Then we get surgical." Over the next weeks, Kendra became a shadow detective, her every move calculated to avoid Jameson's suspicion. She hired a discreet financial analyst, Marcus Reed, to trace their joint accounts. Marcus uncovered a trail of small, suspicious transfers, $2,000 here, $5,000 there, siphoned to an account Kendra didn't recognize. "He's building a nest egg," Marcus said, his voice grim. "Could be for himself, could be for someone else." Kendra's stomach churned, but she pressed on, her resolve hardening. She cross-referenced Jameson's business trips with hotel records, finding bookings at the Ritz-Carlton Atlanta on nights he'd claimed to be in Chicago or Seattle. Simone's team dug deeper, identifying Veronica Langley, a 42-year-old real estate mogul with a penchant for flashy deals and flashier men. Photos surfaced, Veronica and Jameson at a gala, his hand on her lower back, the two laughing over cocktails at a rooftop bar, their closeness unmistakable. Each image was a dagger, but Kendra didn't flinch. She cataloged them in a locked folder, her evidence growing like a fortress. "He's not just cheating," Simone said during a late-night strategy session, her voice low. "He's positioning himself. Veronica's rich, but your wealth dwarfs hers. He's betting on taking a piece of Horizon Media to bankroll their future." Kendra's eyes narrowed. "He'll have to pry it from my cold, dead hands." Simone chuckled, but her expression turned serious. "We activate the prenup's protections now. Move your assets, stocks, properties, liquid funds, to accounts he can't touch. And we document everything, his affair, his financial games. If he makes a move, we're ready." Kendra agreed, her mind already mapping the steps. She met with her family's estate lawyer, transferring her Horizon Media shares to a trust Melissa would inherit, untouchable by Jameson. She opened new accounts at a bank he'd never used, funneling her personal investments, millions in bonds, real estate, and cash, out of their joint reach. At home, Kendra played the part of the devoted wife with chilling precision. She cooked Jameson's favorite jerk chicken, laughed at his tepid jokes, and planned a lavish surprise for his 39th birthday, a rooftop party at the Four Seasons, complete with his tech colleagues and a jazz band. Guests marveled at their perfect marriage, unaware that Kendra's every smile was a mask, her every touch a performance. Jameson, oblivious, basked in the attention, his ego fed by her apparent devotion. "You're too good to me, babe," he'd said, kissing her cheek, the faint scent of Veronica's perfume clinging to his collar. But Kendra saw everything, the way his phone buzzed late at night, the quick glances he stole to check messages, the lies that slipped too easily from his lips. She noted each one in a private journal, her teacher's neat handwriting cataloging his deceit. March 12th, claimed client dinner, home at 1 a.m., smelled of wine and Chanel. April 5th, $10,000, transferred to unknown account, no explanation. Her journal wasn't just a record, it was a weapon, one she'd wield when the time came. Melissa, then 16, noticed her mother's quieter moments, the way Kendra's eyes lingered on the horizon during their movie nights. "You okay, Mom?" she'd asked once, her brow furrowed. Kendra had smiled, ruffling her daughter's curls. "Just thinking about the future, baby. Big things are coming for us." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth. She couldn't burden Melissa, not when her daughter was navigating AP exams and college applications. Kendra's fight was her own, for now. As months passed, Kendra's plan solidified. She installed tracking software on their shared home computer, capturing emails between Jameson and Veronica that hinted at his ambitions. "Once we're clear, I'll get my share of her empire. She won't see it coming." The words burned, but they fueled her. She photographed a receipt from a jewelry store, $15,000 for a necklace she'd never seen. She saved voicemails Jameson left for Veronica, his voice syrupy with promises. Each piece was a brick in the wall she built around her and Melissa's future. By the time Melissa's graduation loomed, Kendra was a general in a silent war, her arsenal ready. She stood in her office, the city sprawling below, and made a final call to Simone. "It's almost time," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. "He's going to make his move soon. I can feel it." Simone's response was immediate. "Let him. We've got everything we need to bury him." Kendra hung up, her reflection in the glass a portrait of resolve. Jameson thought he was playing her, but he was the pawn, and Kendra was ready to checkmate. The Atlanta night pulsed. With a restless energy, its skyline a glittering facade that mirrored the tension simmering in Kendra Washington's heart. 2 days after Jameson's brutal betrayal on the Emory University lawn, Kendra stood in the kitchen of her penthouse, the scent of sage and lavender lingering from a candle she'd lit to cleanse the space of his presence. The memory of his words, "I'm done," and Veronica's venomous taunt, "Not a show-off like you," replayed like a jagged loop. But Kendra's resolve was ironclad. She wasn't just surviving. She was striking back, and her first move was to plant a seed that would unravel the fragile alliance between her husband and his mistress. Kendra sipped a glass of Merlot, her eyes fixed on the city below, its lights a constellation of possibilities. Melissa, exhausted from the emotional toll of graduation day, slept in her room, her graduation gown draped over a chair like a relic of a shattered milestone. Kendra's phone buzzed, a message from Simone, her lawyer and confidant. "Email." "Ready? You sure about this?" Kendra's lips curved into a steely smile. She typed back, "Send it." With a single tap, she unleashed her first gambit, an anonymous email to Veronica Langley, crafted to pierce the smug certainty of Jameson's new life. The email was a masterpiece of subtlety and precision. Sent from a burner account, it read, "Ms. Langley, you should know the man you're betting on. Jameson Carter has been siphoning funds from his wife's accounts to fund your future. Check the attached transfers, $50,000 in the last 6 months, all hidden. Choose your allies wisely." Attached were screenshots of bank records, meticulously gathered by Kendra's financial analyst, showing Jameson's illicit withdrawals from their joint accounts. The final line was a dagger. "A man who betrays, one woman will betray another." Kendra knew Veronica's pride and paranoia would do the rest. She set her glass down, the clink against the marble counter a quiet punctuation to her move. This wasn't revenge. It was strategy. Veronica, with her wealth and ego, would never tolerate being played, and Jameson's lies were a ticking bomb. Kendra imagined Veronica's face, her crimson lips tightening as she opened the email. Doubt, creeping into her carefully curated world. The seed was planted, and Kendra was content to let it grow. Downstairs, the penthouse felt too vast, too haunted by memories of Jameson's laughter, his late-night promises, the life they'd built. Before he'd chosen ambition over love. Kendra couldn't stay here, not with his ghost in every corner. She'd already scouted a new home, a cozy modern villa in Atlanta's upscale suburbs, its warm wood floors and sprawling garden a fresh canvas for her and Melissa. The lease was signed, and the movers were booked for tomorrow. She wanted Melissa to wake up in a space untainted by betrayal, a sanctuary where they could rebuild. Kendra walked to Melissa's room, pausing at the door. Her daughter slept curled under a quilt, her face peaceful despite the storm of the past days. Kendra's heart ached with love and guilt. She'd shielded Melissa from the truth for too long, but no more. Today, they'd start anew, together. She closed the door softly and returned to the living room, her mind shifting to the next phase. Jameson thought he'd humiliated her, but he'd only ignited her fire. And Veronica? She was about to learn the cost of underestimating Kendra Washington. Across town, in Veronica's opulent Buckhead mansion, Jameson lounged on a velvet sofa, a glass of bourbon in hand. The chandelier above cast prisms of light across his face, but his easy grin hid a gnawing unease. Veronica, in a silk robe, paced the room, her phone clutched tightly. The email had arrived minutes ago, and though she hadn't confronted him, yet her eyes flicked to Jameson with a new sharpness. "Everything okay, babe?" he asked, his voice too casual. Veronica's smile was tight. "Just business," she said, but her fingers hovered over the screen, the attached bank records. Burning into her mind, she didn't trust easily, and Jameson's charm was starting to feel like a liability. Kendra, unaware of the exact moment her email landed, felt a spark of satisfaction. She opened her laptop, reviewing the evidence she'd amassed. Texts, receipts, photos of Jameson and Veronica, all time-stamped and organized. Simone had called it a legal arsenal, and Kendra was ready to wield it. But for now, her focus was on Melissa. She wanted her daughter to feel safe, to know that no man, not even her father, could dim their light. The next morning, movers arrived at the penthouse, their efficiency a balm to Kendra's frayed nerves. Melissa emerged from her room, her eyes puffy but curious. "We're moving?" she asked, spotting the boxes. Kendra nodded, pulling her into a hug. "A fresh start, baby. A place that's just ours." Melissa's face lit up, a flicker of hope breaking through her grief. "No more of Dad's stuff?" she asked, her voice tentative. Kendra's smile was gentle but firm. "No more." They drove to the villa, a 20-minute ride through Atlanta's leafy suburbs. The house was everything Kendra had envisioned. Sunlit rooms, a kitchen with a wide island perfect for their late-night talks, a garden where Melissa could read under the oaks. As movers unloaded furniture, Melissa explored, her laughter echoing from the backyard. Kendra watched, her heart swelling. This was their new beginning, and no one would take it from them. Inside, Kendra unpacked a box of photos, Melissa's first dance recital, their trip to Paris, Kendra's Horizon Media launch party. Each image was a reminder of what she'd built, what she'd protect. Her phone buzzed, a call from her assistant at Horizon Media. "Kendra, the board's ready to finalize the $200 million deal with Global Stream. They need you tomorrow." Kendra's mind sharpened. The deal, a landmark for her company, was her chance to cement her power, to show the world and Jameson that she was unstoppable. "Book the meeting," she said. "I'll be there." As evening fell, Kendra and Melissa sat on the villa's patio, sharing a pizza, the air warm with the promise of summer. Melissa, her graduation cap perched playfully on her head, spoke softly. "Mom, what happens now? With Dad, I mean." Kendra set her slice down, her eyes meeting her daughter's. "He'll try to fight, baby. He thinks he can take what's ours, but I've been ready for this and he won't win." Melissa's brow furrowed. "You're not scared?" Kendra's laugh was low, fierce. "Scared? No, I'm angry and I'm focused. We're going to be okay." Melissa reached for her hand, her voice steady. "I'm with you, Mom. Always." Kendra squeezed her hand, the bond between them a lifeline. She thought of the email now burrowing into Veronica's mind, and the legal trap waiting for Jameson. He'd thought his public stunt would break her, but it had only sharpened her. Blade. Across town, Veronica's doubts were growing, her questions about Jameson's finances turning into suspicions. Kendra didn't know the details, but she felt the shift, like a predator sensing a weakening foe. The villa's quiet wrapped around them, a stark contrast to the penthouse's cold grandeur. Kendra looked at Melissa, her daughter's resilience, a mirror of her own. The seeds of doubt were sown, and the harvest would be Jameson's reckoning. For now, Kendra would focus on her empire, her daughter, and the life they were building. The war was just beginning, and Kendra Washington was ready to fight. The courtroom in downtown Atlanta was a crucible of hushed anticipation, its oak-paneled walls absorbing the weight of whispered speculations. Kendra Washington, 37, sat ramrod, straight in the plaintiff's chair, her tailored charcoal suit exuding power. Her eyes fixed on the judge's bench. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and nervous sweat. A month after Jameson Carter's public betrayal on the Emory University lawn had torn their family apart. Today, in this sterile arena, Kendra was ready to draw blood. Not with tears or rage, but with the cold, unyielding precision of law. Her daughter, Melissa, 18, sat behind her, her face a mask of quiet fury, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Jameson, 40, slouched slightly at the defendant's table, his once confident charm dulled by the strain of the past weeks. His navy suit was crisp but ill-fitting, as if he'd borrowed it to salvage his image. Beside him, his lawyer, a slick man named Harold Vance, shuffled papers, his expression pinched. Across town, Veronica Langley, Jameson's mistress, was absent, her absence a silent testament to the doubts Kendra had sown with her anonymous email. The seed had taken root, and Kendra could almost feel the fracture widening between her husband and his lover. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, rapped her gavel. "Carter versus Carter," she announced, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Let's begin." Kendra's lawyer, Simone Carter, no relation to Jameson, rose, her presence commanding. At 40, Simone was a legal lioness, her braids swept into an elegant knot, her eyes sharp as she laid out Kendra's case. "Your Honor," she began, "we're here to enforce the terms of a prenuptial agreement signed by both parties 15 years ago. Mr. Carter's infidelity, documented extensively, triggers a fidelity clause that bars him from claiming any of my client's premarital assets." Simone's voice was a blade, precise and unrelenting. She presented the prenup, its pages worn but legally ironclad, drafted by Kendra's late father, a legal titan. The fidelity clause was highlighted, its language unambiguous. Adultery nullified any claim to Kendra's wealth, her Horizon Media empire, her real estate, her investment portfolios. Simone then unveiled Kendra's arsenal, a binder thick with evidence. Screenshots of Jameson's texts to Veronica, laced with promises of a shared future. Hotel receipts from the Ritz-Carlton, time-stamped on nights he'd claimed business trips. Photos of Jameson and Veronica at galas, their intimacy unmistakable. Bank records showed $50,000 siphoned from joint accounts to a secret one, funds Kendra suspected were meant to woo Veronica. The courtroom stirred, whispers rippling like wind. Through grass, Melissa's eyes burned with a mix of pain and pride, her mother's meticulous preparation a shield against her father's treachery. Jameson shifted uncomfortably, his fingers drumming on the table, his lawyer scribbling notes furiously. "Harold." Vance rose, his voice smooth but strained. "Your Honor, my client contests the validity of this prenup. Signed under duress 15 years ago, it's outdated and unenforceable. Furthermore, these alleged transfers were legitimate business expenses, not evidence of wrongdoing." Kendra's lips twitched, a flicker of disdain. She'd anticipated this defense, and Simone was ready to dismantle it. "Objection," Simone said, her tone icy. The prenup was signed willingly, notarized, and reaffirmed every 5 years, as required by its terms. Mr. Carter signed the latest renewal 3 years ago, with no objection. She produced the renewal documents, each bearing Jameson's signature, his casual scrawl a self-inflicted wound. "As for the transfers," Simone continued, "they were made to an account Mr. Carter opened without my client's knowledge, coinciding with his affair. Hardly business expenses." The judge's eyes narrowed, her pen scratching notes. Kendra felt a surge of confidence, her months of silent planning, tracking Jameson's lies, securing her assets, bearing fruit. She glanced at Melissa, who gave a small nod, her faith in her mother unshakable. The evidence was overwhelming, but Jameson's lawyer tried one last gambit. "Your Honor," Vance said, "Mrs. Carter's actions, freezing joint accounts, transferring assets, suggest bad faith. She's attempting to impoverish my client before a fair division." Simone's laugh was low, cutting. "Bad faith? My client protected her premarital assets, as allowed by the prenup, after discovering Mr. Carter's infidelity and financial misconduct. If anyone acted in bad faith, it's the defendant, who planned to siphon her wealth while publicly humiliating her." She turned to Kendra, her voice softening. "Mrs. Carter, please confirm the timeline of your discoveries." Kendra rose, her presence commanding the room. Her voice was clear, unwavering. 18 months ago, I found a message on my husband's phone confirming an affair with Veronica Langley. I began documenting his actions, texts, receipts, transfers, to protect myself and our daughter. I moved my assets to secure accounts as advised by counsel to ensure he couldn't access what was legally mine. Her words were a quiet thunder, resonating with truth. The judge nodded, her expression unreadable but attentive. Jameson's face flushed, his composure cracking. "That's a lie," he blurted, earning a sharp look from his lawyer. The judge rapped her gavel. "Mr. Carter, control yourself." Kendra sat, her gaze never leaving Jameson, a silent challenge. "You underestimated me." Melissa's hand reached for hers under the table, a lifeline of love and solidarity. The judge recessed for deliberation, the courtroom emptying into a tense hum of conversation. Kendra and Melissa stepped into the hallway, Simone trailing behind. "You were perfect," Simone said, her eyes gleaming. "He's got nothing, and he knows it." Melissa hugged her mother, her voice fierce. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. He thought he could win, but you're unstoppable." Kendra's smile was weary but genuine. "We're unstoppable, baby." Outside, Atlanta's summer heat pressed against the glass doors, a reminder of the world waiting beyond this battle. Kendra's phone buzzed, a text from her assistant at Horizon Media. "Global stream deal signed. 200 meters, congrats, boss." The news was a jolt of triumph, her empire thriving even as her personal life burned. She'd lead a board meeting tomorrow, her position as chairwoman unshaken, her legacy secure. The judge returned, her ruling swift. "The prenup is valid and enforceable," she declared. "Mr. Carter's infidelity, substantiated by evidence, nullifies his claim to Mrs. Carter's premarital assets. The joint accounts remain frozen, pending further review, but Mrs. Carter's actions were within her rights." The gavel fell, a final note in Kendra's victory. Jameson's shoulders slumped, his lawyer's face grim. Kendra felt no joy, only a cold satisfaction. She'd protected what was hers, but the cost was etched in Melissa's eyes, the pain of a father's betrayal. As they left the courtroom, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. "Ms. Washington, any comment on the ruling?" Kendra paused, her voice steady. "Justice was served. My focus is my daughter and my work." She walked on, Melissa at her side, their steps synchronized. That night, in their new villa, Kendra and Melissa celebrated, quietly, a homemade dinner of jerk chicken and cornbread. Melissa, her spirits lifting, spoke of college plans, her dream to study media like her mother. "You're my hero, Mom," she said, her eyes bright. Kendra's heart swelled, but her mind was already on the next move. Jameson's defeat was legal, but his reckoning was far from over. Across town, he sat in Veronica's mansion, her silence louder than any argument. The email Kendra had sent was working its poison, and Jameson's world was shrinking. Kendra cleared the table, her resolve unbroken. The legal battle was won, but the war for her and Melissa's future raged on. She was ready. The Buckhead Mansion glowed like a jewel against the Atlanta night, its floor-to-ceiling windows casting pools of light across manicured lawns. Inside, Veronica Langley's opulent living room was a stage for tension, the air thick with the scent of her signature jasmine perfume and the sharp tang of bourbon. Jameson Carter, 40, sprawled on a velvet sectional, his tie loosened, his face, etched with a forced nonchalance that couldn't mask the storm brewing within. A year had passed since his public betrayal of Kendra Washington on the Emory University lawn, and the paradise he'd envisioned with Veronica, his 42-year-old real estate mogul mistress, was crumbling under the weight of doubt and disdain. Veronica stood by the bar, her crimson nails tapping rhythmically against a crystal tumbler, her platinum hair catching the chandelier's gleam. Her eyes, once warm with adoration for Jameson, now held a cold scrutiny, sharpened by the anonymous email Kendra had sent months ago. The message, detailing Jameson's secret siphoning of $50,000 from his and Kendra's joint accounts, had burrowed into Veronica's mind like a splinter, festering with every unanswered question. "Jameson," she said, her voice low and edged with suspicion, "you never explained that offshore account, the one you claimed was for investments. Care to try again?" Jameson's grip tightened on his glass, the bourbon sloshing slightly. He forced a laugh, the sound brittle. "Babe, I told you. It was a business venture, a crypto deal that didn't pan out. Why are we rehashing this?" But his eyes darted to the floor, a tell that Veronica had learned to read. She stepped closer, her silk robe swishing, her presence commanding. "Because I don't like being lied to," she snapped. "You said you had resources, a plan for us, but all I see is a man living off my dime with nothing to show for it." The words landed like a slap, and Jameson's face flushed, a mix of shame and defiance. He'd lost everything in the legal battle with Kendra: his claim to her Horizon Media empire, their joint accounts, his job at the tech firm after an audit exposed his misuse of company funds for lavish dinners with Veronica. He'd moved into her mansion, expecting a life of luxury, but Veronica's patience was thinning. The email had planted a seed of doubt, and Kendra's calculated silence since the courtroom victory had let it grow unchecked. Across town, in the warm glow of their suburban villa, Kendra and Melissa, now 19, sat at the kitchen island, the aroma of fresh-baked cornbread filling the air. Kendra, 38, her curls pulled into a loose bun, laughed as Melissa recounted a college media class debate, her daughter's passion for journalism a spark that lit up the room. The villa, with its sunlit spaces and blooming garden, was their sanctuary, a stark contrast to the cold penthouse they'd left behind. Kendra's empire, Horizon Media, had soared with a $200 million Global Stream deal, and her new venture, the Melissa Scholars Fund, was drawing national attention for empowering Black women in media. But beneath Kendra's calm exterior, a strategist's mind hummed. She knew the email to Veronica would be working its magic, eroding the trust between her ex-husband and his lover. She'd heard whispers through Atlanta's elite circles, Veronica's sharp questions at galas, Jameson's strained smiles. Tonight, as Melissa chattered, Kendra felt a quiet satisfaction. She didn't need to confront Jameson. His own lies were his undoing. Back at the mansion, the argument escalated. Veronica slammed her glass down, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "I checked the records, Jameson," she said, her voice rising. "Those transfers weren't for crypto. They came from your wife's accounts, money you had no right to touch. Were you playing me? Using me to bankroll your escape from her?" Jameson stood, his hands raised in protest. "That's insane, Veronica. Kendra's twisting things, trying to sabotage us. You know she's vindictive." Veronica's laugh was sharp, cutting. "Vindictive?" She didn't need to lift a finger. "You lost your job, your money, your daughter, all on your own. Thought you were a partner, not a parasite." The word hung heavy and Jameson's face crumpled, his charm failing him. "I gave up everything for you," he said, his voice cracking. "My family, my life, and now you're turning on me?" "You gave up nothing," Veronica shot back, stepping closer, her eyes blazing. "You traded a queen for a fantasy, and now you're surprised it's falling apart? Get out, Jameson, I'm done." She pointed to the door, her voice final. Jameson froze, disbelief etched across his features. "You can't mean that," he stammered. "We had plans, real estate deals, a new life." Veronica's smile was icy. "Plans require trust. You have none left." Jameson grabbed his jacket, his movements jerky, and stormed out, the mansion's heavy door slamming behind him. He stood on the driveway, the humid night pressing against him. His rental car, a pathetic shadow of the BMW he'd once driven. He pulled out his phone, dialing Melissa, his last lifeline. "Melissa, it's Dad," he said when she answered, his voice thick with desperation. "I need to see you. I messed up, but you're all I have left." Melissa, sitting in her villa bedroom, her textbooks scattered, felt a pang of pity but held firm. "Dad," she said, her voice steady, "you chose Veronica over us. You humiliated Mom, hurt me on my graduation day. I'm not ready to see you. I need time." She hung, her hands trembling, and ran to Kendra, collapsing into her mother's arms. "I told him no," she whispered, tears falling. Kendra held her tightly, her voice soothing. "You did what's right for you, baby. I'm here, always." Kendra's heart ached for Melissa's pain, but she felt a surge of pride in her daughter's strength. She thought of Jameson, now cast out, his paradise fractured. She hadn't needed to raise a hand. His own deceit had been his downfall. Veronica's rejection was the first crack, and Kendra knew more would follow. She'd heard through Simone that Jameson's former colleagues shunned him, his reputation tarnished by the audit's findings. He was a man adrift, and Kendra's silent plan had steered him there. As Melissa drifted to sleep, Kendra stepped onto the villa's patio, the night air cool against her skin. She sipped a glass of water, her mind clear. The Melissa Scholars Fund was thriving, with dozens of applications pouring in, each one a testament to her vision. Horizon Media's board had just approved a new global campaign, cementing her legacy. And Melissa, despite her father's betrayal, was blossoming, her college essays filled with dreams of journalism inspired by her mother. Kendra's phone buzzed, a text from Simone. "Heard Jameson's out of Veronica's place. You called?" Kendra's smile was faint but fierce. She didn't reply, letting the moment settle. Jameson had thought he could break her, steal her wealth, and walk away unscathed. But Kendra had outplayed him. Her silent moves, evidence gathered, assets secured, doubts sown, unraveling his world. Veronica's mansion, once his haven, was now a cage he'd been evicted from. The stars above glittered, and Kendra felt a quiet power. The legal battle had been won, the seeds of doubt had sprouted, and now Jameson's paradise lay in ruins. She wasn't done, not yet. Her fight was for Melissa, for their future, for every woman who'd been underestimated. As crickets sang in, the garden Kendra vowed to keep building, her strength a beacon in the darkness. Jameson's reckoning was unfolding, and Kendra was its architect. The Atlanta dusk painted the sky in hues of amber and violet, a fleeting beauty that went unnoticed by Jameson Carter as he slumped on a sagging couch in his cramped studio apartment. The room, tucked in a rundown complex on the city's outskirts, reeked of stale coffee and despair, its peeling wallpaper a stark contrast to the opulence of Veronica Langley's Buckhead mansion he'd called home a year ago. At 42, Jameson's once polished charm had eroded, his face lined with the weight of 2 years' worth of losses, his marriage, his daughter, his job, his dreams. The sting of Kendra Washington's triumph, now blazing across a Forbes magazine cover on his coffee table, was a fresh wound, one he couldn't ignore. The magazine's headline screamed, "Kendra Washington, the media mogul redefining resilience." The photo captured Kendra, 39, radiant in a tailored emerald blazer, her curls framing a face that exuded power and grace. Beside her stood Melissa, 20, her smile mirroring her mother's, the two a portrait of unbreakable bonds at a Melissa Scholars Fund event. Jameson's fingers traced the image, his throat tightening. 2 years ago, he'd stood on the Emory University lawn, publicly casting Kendra aside for Veronica, believing he'd seize a glittering future. Now that future was ash, and regret was his only companion. He reached for a half-empty bottle of whiskey, the burn a poor substitute for the life he'd squandered. His phone, cracked and outdated, lay silent. No calls from Veronica, who'd Evicted him a year ago after Kendra's anonymous email exposed his financial deceit. No messages from Melissa, who'd rebuffed his desperate pleas for reconciliation. His job prospects, once buoyed by tech industry connections, had dried up. The audit that cost him his position had branded him untrustworthy. Now he scraped by. On freelance coding gigs, each paycheck a reminder of his fall. Jameson's eyes drifted to a crumpled notebook, its pages filled with a letter he'd drafted to Kendra. "I was a fool," he'd written, the words smudged by sweat and shame. "My greed blinded me. You were everything, and I threw it away for nothing. Please let me make amends." He'd mailed it a week ago, a last-ditch hope for absolution. But deep down, he knew Kendra owed him nothing. She'd outplayed him. Her silent plan, from securing her assets to sowing doubt in Veronica's mind, had left him with nothing but his own mistakes. Across town, in the warm glow of their suburban villa, Kendra sat at her dining table, surrounded by papers for the Melissa Scholars Fund's latest expansion. The villa, with its sunlit rooms and blooming garden, was a haven for her and Melissa, a testament to their resilience. Melissa, home from college for the weekend, laughed over a plate of jerk chicken, recounting a journalism project that had earned her professor's praise. Kendra, her heart full, watched her daughter shine, her own success, Horizon Media's global campaign, the fund's growing impact, a backdrop to their unbreakable bond. A knock interrupted their meal, a courier delivering a stack of mail. Among the letters was Jameson's, its envelope worn as if he'd hesitated before sending it. Kendra's fingers paused, her expression unreadable. Melissa glanced at it, her brow furrowing. "Is that from Dad?" she asked, her voice tight. Kendra nodded, setting the letter aside. "It is, but it can wait." Melissa's eyes searched her mother's face. "Are you going to read it?" Kendra's smile was faint but firm. "Maybe, but his words don't change our future." Later, alone in her study, Kendra opened the letter, her curiosity outweighing her indifference. Jameson's scrawl spilled across the page, a litany of regret and self-pity. "I see you on Forbes, thriving, and it kills me," he wrote. "I thought I'd be the one to soar, but I was nothing without you." Kendra's lips pressed into a thin line. His remorse felt hollow, a plea born of consequence, not change. She folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, her mind clear. "I don't need your apologies," she murmured to the empty room. "I've built my happiness." Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, the film producer she'd been seeing for months. "Saw you in Forbes. Proud of you, Queen. Dinner tomorrow?" Kendra's smile softened, warmth spreading through her. Marcus, with his quiet strength and genuine admiration, was a new chapter, one untainted by betrayal. She typed back, "Can't wait," her heart light. Jameson's letter was a ghost, irrelevant to the life she'd forged. Back in his apartment, Jameson stared at the ceiling, the whiskey blurring his thoughts. He'd called Melissa earlier, his voice cracking as he begged for a chance to talk. "I'm not ready, Dad," she'd said, her tone firm but tinged with pain. "You hurt us too much." The dial tone had echoed in his ears, a finality that crushed him. He thought of Kendra's Forbes cover, of Melissa's proud smile, and realized they'd moved on, their world vibrant without him. His arrogance, his belief that he could outmaneuver Kendra, had been his undoing. She hadn't needed to fight him. She'd simply let his lies collapse under their own weight. Kendra, meanwhile, stepped onto the villa's patio, the night air cool against her skin. She sipped a glass of wine, her mind on the future. The Melissa Scholars Fund had awarded 50 scholarships this year, each recipient a spark of hope. Horizon Media's new campaign was breaking records, her leadership was celebrated globally, and Melissa, thriving in college, was carving her path, inspired by her mother's strength. Kendra felt no triumph over Jameson's downfall, only a quiet certainty that she'd done what was necessary to protect her daughter and her legacy. Jameson, unable to sleep, walked to his window, the city's distant lights mocking his isolation. He thought of the Emery lawn, his cruel words to Kendra, Veronica's laughter egging him on. He'd believed he was seizing freedom, but he'd only forged his chains. Veronica's rejection, Melissa's distance, Kendra's untouchable success. They were mirrors reflecting his failure. He clutched the whiskey bottle, its burn no match for the ache in his soul. "What have I done?" he whispered. But the empty room offered no answer. Kendra, gazing at the stars, felt a peace she'd earned. Jameson's letter, his regret, was a footnote in her story. She'd faced his betrayal, outsmarted his schemes, and built a life richer than he could imagine. Melissa's laughter drifted from the house, a reminder of what mattered. Kendra raised her glass to the night, a silent toast to her strength, her daughter, and the future they'd shaped together. Jameson's regret was too late. His voice was drowned by the roar of her triumph. The war was over, and Kendra had won, not with vengeance but with vision. The Grand Meridian Hotel's ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers, their light dancing across tables adorned with ivory roses and silver accents. Atlanta's elite filled the space, their murmurs blending with the soft clinking of champagne flutes, all gathered for the second anniversary gala of the Melissa Scholars Fund. Kendra Washington, 39, stood near the entrance, a vision in a sapphire gown that hugged her curves. Her curls swept into an elegant updo streaked with silver. Her presence was magnetic, her smile a beacon of resilience 2 years after Jameson Carter's public betrayal on the Emory University lawn. Tonight she wasn't just a media mogul or a mother. She was a symbol of triumph, and the room knew it. The banner above read, "Melissa Scholars, Empowering Futures," a testament to Kendra's vision of uplifting Black women in media. The fund had awarded 100 scholarships, launched mentorship programs, and drawn national acclaim, its impact rippling far beyond Atlanta. Kendra greeted guests, philanthropists, educators, media titans, with a warmth that belied the steel beneath. Her daughter Melissa, 20, radiant in a gold dress, worked the room with poise, her journalism studies fueling her passion for the "Mom's built something incredible," she told a donor, her eyes shining with pride. As the clock neared 8 p.m., the ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Kendra took her seat at the head table, flanked by Melissa and Simone, her lawyer and friend, whose sharp wit had been a lifeline through the storm of Jameson's deceit. The fund's director, Dr. Elaine Harris, a retired Spelman professor, approached the podium, her voice warm. "Tonight we celebrate resilience, vision, and the power of community," she began, her words met with applause. "And we honor Kendra Washington, whose journey from betrayal to purpose inspires us all." Kendra's smile was serene, but her mind flickered to the past. The Emory lawn, Jameson's cruel words, Veronica's taunting laugh. She'd turned that pain into power, her silent strategies, securing assets, sowing doubt, winning the legal battle, paving the way for this moment. The gala wasn't just a fundraiser, it was a declaration. Kendra Washington was unbreakable. The program unfolded seamlessly. A video showcased scholars' stories, their voices raw with gratitude. A keynote from a CNN anchor praised Kendra's leadership. Melissa introduced a panel of recipients, her confidence a mirror of her mother's. Kendra watched, her heart swelling, until a commotion at the entrance shattered the harmony. Heads turned, whispers rising like a tide. Jameson Carter stood in the doorway, his suit rumpled, his face flushed with the telltale haze of whiskey. A security guard hovered, uncertain, as Jameson's voice cut through the room. "I need to talk to Kendra." The ballroom fell silent, 300 pairs of eyes darting between Jameson and Kendra. Melissa stiffened, her hand gripping Kendra's under the table. Simone's jaw tightened, her eyes signaling the guard. Kendra, her pulse steady, rose with a grace that silenced the murmurs. "Stay calm," she whispered to Melissa, then walked toward the entrance, her heels clicking with purpose. The crowd parted, their gazes a mix of shock and admiration. Jameson swayed slightly, his eyes bloodshot, fixed on her. "Kendra," he slurred, "you can't keep pretending I don't exist. This," he gestured wildly at the gala, "it's built on lies. You ruined me." Kendra stopped a few feet away, her expression composed, her voice clear. Jameson, this is a celebration of hope, not a stage for your grievances. Leave, now. Her words were calm, but carried a weight that made the guard step forward. Jameson laughed, a broken, bitter as ash. Hope? You destroyed my life, took my money, my daughter, my future, and now you're the hero. He lurched toward her, but the guard caught his arm, firm but restrained. Melissa stood, her voice trembling but fierce. Dad, stop. You did this to yourself. The crowd gasped, the raw pain in her words piercing the tension. Kendra's eyes flicked to her daughter, a silent plea for calm, then back to Jameson. You chose to betray us, she said, her voice rising just enough to carry. You humiliated me on Melissa's graduation day, schemed to steal what I built and thought I'd crumble. But I didn't. This fund, these women, they're proof that pain can birth purpose. Jameson's face twisted, regret and rage warring within him. You make it sound so noble, he spat. But you planned it all. Those emails to Veronica, the audit, the prenup. You wanted me to suffer. Kendra's smile was faint, unyielding. I wanted to protect my daughter and my legacy. Your suffering was a consequence, not my goal. She stepped closer, her voice dropping but audible to the rapt audience. You thought you'd break me, Jameson. Instead, you freed me to become this. The room was still, the weight of her words settling like a verdict. Simone nodded subtly, security closing in. Jameson's eyes for a moment cleared, the haze giving way to a flicker of the man he'd been. I'm sorry, he whispered, barely audible. I didn't know how far I'd fall. Kendra's gaze softened, not with forgiveness, but with pity. Your apologies are too late, she said. This is my night, our night. Go. The guard escorted Jameson out, his shoulders slumped, his defiance drained. The door closed, and a profound silence held the room until Dr. Harris returned to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice steady, what we've witnessed is the essence of Melissa Scholars. Dignity in adversity, strength in truth. Ms. Washington, please share your vision. The crowd erupted in applause, a standing ovation that thundered through the ballroom. Kendra approached the podium, her prepared speech discarded. 2 years ago, she began, her voice rich with candor. My world was shattered by betrayal, but I refused to let it define me. Melissa Scholars isn't about victimhood. It's about choice, about turning pain into power. For 15 minutes, she spoke without notes, weaving her journey from the Emery lawn to this moment, her words raw, eloquent, spellbinding. She spoke of Melissa's resilience, of scholars finding their voices, of a community built on mutual healing. Every woman, here, she concluded, carries a story of loss but also of renewal. Together we write the next chapter. The applause was deafening, lasting until Kendra gestured for calm. Guests surged forward, offering donations, sharing stories, their faces alight with inspiration. Melissa hugged her mother, tears in her eyes. You were amazing, Mom, she whispered. I've never been prouder. Kendra held her close, her heart full. Simone joined them, a champagne flute in hand. You turned a disaster into a triumph, she said, grinning. Donations are pouring in, 50% above our goal. As the gala wound down, Kendra stood at the ballroom's edge, watching guests depart. Dr. Harris approached, her eyes gleaming. We've raised enough to fund every program next year, she said. Your strength tonight sealed it. Kendra nodded, the weight of the evening settling. Jameson's intrusion had been a ghost of the past, but her response had been her present, a testament to her unbreakable spirit. She stepped outside, the night air cool, and looked at the stars. 2 years ago, Jameson's betrayal had seemed like the end. Tonight, it was the spark of her rebirth. Kendra Washington wasn't just surviving, she was soaring, and the gala was her proof. The Atlanta night was alive with a gentle hum, the city's skyline twinkling like a promise kept. Kendra Washington, 39, stood on the balcony of her suburban villa, the air warm with the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden below. The stars above seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, a quiet celebration of the life she'd reclaimed. 2 years had passed since Jameson Carter's cruel betrayal on the Emory University lawn, a moment that had once threatened to shatter her world. Now, as she sipped a glass of chilled Prosecco, Kendra felt only the weight of triumph, her journey from pain to purpose complete. The villa, with its sunlit rooms and laughter-filled corners, was her sanctuary, shared with her daughter, Melissa, whose resilience mirrored her own. Inside, Melissa, 20, sprawled on the living room couch, her laptop open to a draft of her latest journalism piece for her college newspaper. Her curls were tucked into a messy bun, her eyes bright with the fire of ambition. "Mom," she called, glancing up, "you've got to read this letter. It's about the Scholars Fund." Kendra smiled, stepping back inside, the glass doors sliding shut behind her. The Melissa Scholars Fund, now a national beacon for empowering Black women in media, had grown beyond Kendra's wildest dreams. With 150 scholarships awarded and a new mentorship network spanning 10 cities, it was her legacy, named for the daughter who'd stood by her through the storm. Kendra sank beside Melissa, scanning the article. "This is powerful, baby," she said, her voice warm with pride. "You're telling our story, but it's bigger than us now." Melissa grinned, leaning into her mother's shoulder. "It's your story, Mom. You turned Dad's mess into this." She gestured around them to the villa's cozy elegance, to the framed Forbes cover on the wall, Kendra's face radiant under the headline, "Redefining Resilience." The gala a week ago, where Kendra had faced down Jameson's drunken intrusion with unyielding grace, had cemented her as a symbol of strength, raising millions for the fund and igniting a wave of support. The memory of Jameson's slurred accusations, his claim that she'd ruined him, lingered, but it held no power. Kendra had read his letter of regret, its words heavy with self-pity, and set it aside. He was a shadow, irrelevant to the radiant future she and Melissa were building. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, the film producer who'd become a steady presence in her life. "Miss you tonight, that gala speech is still trending, queen shit." Kendra chuckled, typing back, "Miss you too. Dinner soon?" Marcus, with his quiet strength and respect for her independence, was a new chapter, one she welcomed without fear. Melissa closed her laptop, her expression softening. "Mom, do you ever think about Dad? Like, what he's doing now?" The question was gentle, probing, a rare glimpse into the wound Jameson had left. Kendra set her glass down, her gaze steady. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not because I miss him, but because he's part of our past. He chose his path, Melissa, and it led him away from us. I hope he finds peace, but it's not my burden to carry." Melissa nodded, her eyes distant. "He called again yesterday. Wanted to meet, said he's changed." I didn't answer. Kendra's heart ached for her daughter's pain, but she trusted Melissa's strength. "You decide when or if you're ready," she said, squeezing her hand. "Your heart's big, but it's yours to protect." Melissa smiled, a flicker of her mother's resolve. "I'm good, Mom, I've got you, and that's enough." The villa was quiet, save for the soft hum of crickets outside. Kendra thought of the past 2 years, the silent plan to secure her assets, the legal battle that crushed Jameson's schemes, the email that fractured his paradise with Veronica. Each move had been a step toward this moment, where she stood not as a victim, but as a victor. Horizon Media, her empire, was thriving, its global campaign breaking revenue records. The Melissa Scholars Fund had drawn interest from major donors, with talks of a documentary to amplify its impact. And Melissa, now a sophomore, was carving her own path, her journalism a voice for the voiceless, inspired by her mother's courage. Kendra rose, walking to the patio doors, her reflection a portrait of a woman transformed. She thought of the Emory lawn, Jameson's words like knives, Veronica's laughter a taunt. That day, she'd felt the world's eyes on her, judging, pitying. But she'd walked away with her head high, Melissa at her side, and turned pain into power. The gala had been her coronation, her speech a manifesto. Pain can birth purpose. The standing ovation, the flood of donations, the scholars' tearful gratitude. They were proof that her darkest moment had sparked a radiant future. Melissa joined her, a mug of tea in hand. "What's next, Mom?" she asked, her voice bright. With curiosity, Kendra turned, her smile luminous. "Everything," she said. "We expand the fund, maybe take it international. You keep writing, telling stories that matter. And we live. Fully, fearlessly." Melissa laughed, the sound a melody. "I want to be like you," she said. "Not just the media mogul, but you. Strong, even when it hurts." Kendra's throat tightened, and she pulled Melissa into a hug. "You already are," she whispered. "You're my why, Melissa, always." They stood there, mother and daughter, the city's lights a backdrop to their unbreakable bond. Kendra felt the weight of her journey, the nights of silent planning, the courtroom's cold verdict, the gala's electric triumph. Each had shaped her into this woman, one who'd turned betrayal into a beacon. Somewhere in Atlanta, Jameson sat alone in his dim apartment, the Forbes cover a cruel reminder of his fall. He'd lost everything. Veronica's mansion, Melissa's trust, his own pride. His letter to Kendra had gone unanswered, her silence louder than any rebuke. He saw her gala speech online, her words searing. "We write the next chapter." He'd tried to rewrite his story, but it was too late. Kendra and Melissa were a universe he could no longer touch, their light outshining his shadows. Kendra and Melissa returned to the living room, settling on the couch with a shared blanket. Melissa opened her laptop, reading her article aloud, her voice vibrant. Kendra listened, her heart full, the Prosecco forgotten. This was her future, Melissa's dreams, the fund's impact, her own unyielding spirit. She thought of the scholars, young women rising against odds, their stories echoing her own. She thought of Marcus, a partner who saw her as an equal. And she thought of herself, no longer defined by Jameson's cruelty, but by the radiant life she'd built. The night deepened, the villa a cocoon of love and possibility. Kendra's phone chimed. A message from Dr. Elaine Harris, the fund's director. New donor pledged $5 your story's changing lives. Kendra smiled, her resolve unshaken. The war with Jameson was over, his regret a footnote. Her fight now was for the future, for Melissa, for the scholars, for every woman who'd ever been underestimated. As Melissa's voice filled the room, Kendra knew this was her radiant future, and it was only the beginning. Thank you for joining us on Kendra Washington's incredible journey of resilience and triumph. Her story reminds us that even the deepest betrayals can spark a radiant future when we choose strength over surrender. What did Kendra's transformation inspire in you? How have you turned pain into purpose in your own life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more gripping tales of courage and redemption. Until next time, keep shining, and we'll see you soon.